The blood money sat in Brielle Zimmerman's palm like 30 pieces of silver, still warm from the hair broker's hand, and she didn't let herself cry until she was 3 blocks away from the shop with its neon sign that read, "We buy hair cash paid." Her hand went to the back of her neck, to the place where thick mahogany waves had cascaded down to her waist just an hour ago. Now there was nothing but the sharp edge of a bob that barely brushed her shoulders, the weight of all those years of careful growth gone in 20 minutes of methodical scissors and electric clippers. The broker had been efficient, professional, utterly indifferent to the tears that had slipped down Brielle's cheeks, as she'd watched her reflection lose the one thing about herself she'd always loved. But her brother needed the medicine more than she needed vanity. Brielle clutched the envelope of cash, $400 for virgin hair, long and undyed and perfect for wig making, and headed toward the pharmacy on 8th Street. The late October wind cut through her jacket, finding her newly exposed neck with cruel precision. She pulled her collar up and walked faster, her sneakers slapping against wet pavement as the city's evening lights began to flicker on around her. She didn't notice the figure watching from the rooftop 4 stories above. Alaric Thorne, King of the Northern Covenant and Lord of 7 bloodlines, stood perfectly still against the darkening sky, his white hair lifting in the same wind that tormented the girl below. His pale fingers held something that gleamed like spun copper in the fading light, a thick braid of human hair, still tied with an elastic band at one end, the cut end ragged and fresh. He'd found it in the alley behind the hair broker's establishment 20 minutes ago, discarded in a plastic bag atop a dumpster like refuse. But the moment his fingers had touched it, power had sung through his veins like nothing he'd felt in 3 centuries. The hair belonged to someone extraordinary, someone whose blood would be unlike anything he'd ever tasted. The essence lingered in every strand, calling to something primal and possessive in his ancient soul. Alaric had ruled the vampire world for 247 years. He'd tasted the blood of kings and queens, of warriors and mystics, of the rare and the powerful. None had ever called to him like this. The hair in his hands thrummed with life, with a vitality that spoke of bloodline magic so deep the girl herself probably didn't even know what ran through her veins, and some fool had sold it, had cut away this magnificent power and sold it for human currency. The king's jaw tightened as he watched the girl she had to be the owner, her newly shorn head a beacon even in the crowded street, disappear into a pharmacy. Every instinct he possessed told him to follow, to claim, to take what was clearly meant to be his. The hair in his hands was proof of ownership more binding than any human law, but Alaric hadn't survived this long by acting on impulse alone. He waited. Brielle emerged from the pharmacy 15 minutes later with a small white bag clutched against her chest like a lifeline. Her face was blotchy from crying, her eyes red-rimmed, but there was determination in the set of her shoulders as she turned north toward the apartment she shared with her brother in the cheaper part of the city. Alaric followed from the rooftops, his movements silent and impossibly swift. The Vampire King moved like living shadow, leaping gaps between buildings that would kill a human, his long black coat billowing behind him like wings. He kept the girl in sight, studying her with the intensity of a predator learning its prey. Except she wasn't prey. She was something else entirely. The apartment building where she finally stopped was a decrepit 4-story walk-up with rusted fire escapes and windows covered in thick bars. Alaric watched her climb to the 3rd floor, saw her unlock a door marked 3C, heard her call out, "Benjamin, I'm home. I got it. I got the medicine." A boy's weak voice answered, relief and love evident even through the walls that were no barrier to vampire hearing. "Bree? What did you do? Nothing that matters. Just drink this and rest. The doctor said 3 doses a day for 2 weeks and you'll be fine." "Brielle Zimmerman, what did you do?" Silence, then quietly. "I sold my hair. It's just hair, Ben. It grows back." The boy's anguished protest was cut off by a coughing fit that sounded like it was tearing him apart from the inside. Alaric could smell the sickness even from outside, some human ailment that his kind were immune to, but that was clearly killing the boy by degrees. The girl had sold her hair, had cut away her power and her beauty, to buy medicine for a dying sibling. Something unfamiliar twisted in Alaric's chest, something almost like respect. He settled onto the fire escape outside their window, hidden in shadow, and studied the scene inside. The apartment was small and shabby, the furniture worn and mismatched. The girl knelt beside a narrow bed where a boy of perhaps 16 lay propped on pillows, his face pale and drawn. She held a bottle of medicine with the kind of careful hope that broke hearts, measuring out a dose with shaking hands. "It's going to work," she told him firmly. "Dr. Morrison said this is the good stuff, the antibiotic that actually works on the resistant strain. You'll be better in 2 weeks. You loved your hair. The boy's voice cracked. Brie, you loved it so much. I love you more, you idiot. She smoothed the medicine bottle against her forehead, closing her eyes. Hair grows back. Little brothers are irreplaceable. Alaric watched them for another hour as the girl made dinner from meager supplies: pasta with jarred sauce, garlic bread from the freezer. She fed her brother with patient care, made him laugh despite his obvious pain, cleaned up with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for a long time. The entire apartment smelled of sickness and poverty, and the peculiar desperation of humans trying to survive against impossible odds. But underneath it all, underneath the mundane human sense, Alaric caught traces of what the girl truly was. Her blood sang to him even through walls and distance. Old magic, bloodline magic, the kind that hadn't walked the earth in generations. She was descended from the Keepers. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The Keepers had been human families bound to vampire bloodlines centuries ago, chosen companions and donors who carried magic in their veins that enhanced vampire power tenfold. They'd been cherished, protected, elevated to positions of honor in the vampire courts. But the bloodlines had died out centuries ago, hunted to extinction by vampire politics and human wars. Or so everyone had believed. Yet here was proof: a girl whose very essence called to him with the unmistakable signature of Keeper heritage, living in poverty and ignorance of what she truly was, what she could be, what she was meant to be. Alaric's fingers tightened on the braid of hair he still carried. In the old days, this would have been a courting gift, freely given by a Keeper to their chosen vampire as a symbol of trust and binding. To find it discarded, sold like common goods, was an insult to everything the ancient ways had held sacred. But the girl didn't know. She couldn't know. The Keeper families were long dead, their traditions forgotten, which meant Brielle Zimmerman had no idea that she'd just sold a piece of her soul to a hair broker for $400, and that the Vampire King himself had found it. Alaric made his decision. He would claim her, not as prey, but as what she was meant to be: his Keeper, his companion, his chosen one. He would bring her into his world, teach her what she was, unlock the power sleeping in her veins, and in return, she would give him what no vampire had possessed in 2 centuries: a true bond, a connection that would make him stronger than any of his rivals could imagine. But first, he had to approach this carefully. Humans were fragile creatures, easily frightened. And this particular human had no reason to trust a vampire, no knowledge of the ancient pacts and honors that had once governed their kind's interactions. Alaric waited until the apartment lights went out, until the girl's breathing had evened into sleep. Then he placed the braid of hair carefully on the fire escape outside her window, positioned so she'd see it the moment she looked out in the morning. A calling card. A promise, a claim. Then the Vampire King disappeared into the night, already planning his next move. Brielle woke to her alarm at 6 a.m. with her neck cold and her heart heavy. For a moment, still fuzzy with sleep, she forgot what had happened. Then her hand went to her head and met short hair instead of the familiar weight of her braid, and everything came crashing back. She lay still for a moment, fighting the urge to cry again. It was just hair. It would grow back. Benjamin was already breathing easier after his first night of medication, and that was worth everything, worth all the hair in the world. She dragged herself out of bed and padded to the kitchen to start coffee, moving quietly so she wouldn't wake her brother. Their apartment was freezing, as usual. The landlord kept the heat at barely functional levels, and Brielle wrapped herself in her thickest cardigan as she measured out their carefully rationed coffee grounds. The sky outside was still dark, the street below lit by flickering yellow street lamps. Brielle went to the window to check the weather, to see if she'd need an umbrella for her walk to the diner, where she worked the morning shift. That's when she saw it. Her braid. Her actual braid, lying on the fire escape outside her window like an offering. Brielle's heart stopped. She grabbed the window frame, staring at the thick rope of mahogany hair that she'd watched the broker bag up and take away yesterday. There was no mistaking it. She could see the elastic band she'd used. The exact length and color and wave that had been hers for 23 years. Someone had brought it back. Someone had climbed up to their 3rd-floor apartment and left her hair on the fire escape like a calling card. Brielle's hands shook as she unlocked the window and pushed it open, the cold morning air hitting her like a slap. She reached out and grabbed the braid, pulling it inside, her heart hammering against her ribs. It was hers. Definitely hers. Still smelled like her shampoo, still felt like silk against her fingers. But why? Who would do this? A note was tied around the elastic band, cream-colored paper folded into a precise square. Brielle's fingers fumbled as she unfolded it, her breath coming fast and shallow. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, written in actual ink. You should not have sold what was never yours to sell. This belongs to you as you belong to your destiny. I will come for you soon, Brielle Zimmerman. Be ready. No signature, no explanation, just a promise that made her blood run cold and hot at the same time. Brielle looked out the window, scanning the fire escape, the alley below, the rooftops across the street. Nothing. No one. Just the empty morning and the impossible evidence in her hands that someone knew her name, knew what she'd done, and had somehow retrieved her hair from a broker who'd probably already sold it or processed it or whatever they did with donated hair. Bree? Benjamin's voice was thick with sleep and confusion. What are you doing? It's freezing. She slammed the window shut and shoved the braid and note into a kitchen drawer, her heart still racing. Nothing. Just checking the weather. Go back to sleep. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted, of belonging to something she didn't understand. Alaric watched from the neighboring rooftop as the girl discovered his gift, as her face cycled through confusion and fear and something that might have been wonder. He saw her hide the braid from her brother, saw her hands shake as she closed the window. Good. She was smart enough to be afraid. Smart enough to know that something beyond her understanding had entered her life. Now he just had to wait for the fear to transform into curiosity, into need. It took 3 days, 3 days during which Brielle went to work at the diner, came home to care for Benjamin, and tried to pretend that her world hadn't tilted off its axis. 3 days during which she pulled out the braid a dozen times, read the note until she had it memorized, and told herself she should go to the police. But what would she tell them? That someone had returned something she'd sold? That a note had promised to come for her? There was nothing explicitly threatening in the words. Nothing the police could act on. And besides, a small traitorous part of her whispered, "Aren't you curious?" The answer was yes. God help her, yes. On the 3rd night, Brielle couldn't sleep. Benjamin was doing better. The medicine was working. His fever was down. His cough was easing. He'd even eaten a full meal without getting exhausted. Things were looking up. So why did she feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff? She got out of bed at midnight and went to the kitchen, pulling the braid from its drawer. In the dim light from the street, the hair looked almost alive, gleaming with a richness she'd never noticed when it was attached to her head. She ran her fingers through it, remembering the weight, the warmth. You're more beautiful without it. Brielle screamed and spun around, the braid falling from her hands. A man stood in her living room. Except he wasn't a man, couldn't be a man, because no human had skin that pale, or eyes that silver, or hair that white. He was tall and lean, dressed in black from head to toe, and he radiated power like heat from a furnace. And he was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for centuries. "Who the hell are you?" Brielle grabbed a knife from the dish rack, her hands shaking so hard the blade rattled. "How did you get in here?" "I am Alaric Thorne." He inclined his head with old-fashioned courtesy, completely unconcerned by the weapon she held. "And I entered through your front door. Your locks are insufficient. Get out. Get out, or I'm calling the police." "You won't." His voice was certain, calm. "Because you want to know why I returned your hair, why I know your name, what destiny I spoke of in my note." He was right, and she hated him for it. "What are you?" The question came out as a whisper. Alaric smiled, and in the dim light, Brielle saw the unmistakable gleam of fangs. "I think you already know, Brielle Zimmerman." "Vampire." The words slammed into her brain with the force of revelation. Vampires were real. They were real, and one was standing in her living room at midnight, looking at her like she was something precious and dangerous at the same time. "I'm going to scream." Her voice shook. "I'm going to wake up my brother and the neighbors, and Benjamin is sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. I can hear his heartbeat from here, strong and steady, no trace of the infection that was killing him. Do you really want to wake him just as he's begun to heal?" Brielle's grip on the knife tightened. "What do you want?" "To talk. To explain what you are, what you could be." Alaric moved closer, his movements impossibly fluid. "I mean you no harm, little keeper. If I wanted to hurt you, you would already be dead. That's not reassuring." "It's honest." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the inhuman perfection of his features. "I am the Vampire King, Brielle. I have ruled the Northern Covenant for nearly 2.5 centuries. In all that time, I have never encountered anything like you. I'm nobody. I'm a waitress from the bad part of town. You've got the wrong person. You are descended from the Keepers." Alaric's silver eyes locked onto hers, an ancient bloodline that served as companions to vampire royalty. "Your blood carries magic that enhances our power, deepens our connection to the world." Keeper families were treasured, protected, elevated to positions of honor. They chose which vampire they would bond with, and that bond was sacred. Brielle shook her head. That's insane. I'm not magical. I'm not special. I'm just you sold your hair for $400. Alaric bent and picked up the braid from where she'd dropped it, holding it like it was made of spun gold. Do you know what this is worth to my kind? What power it holds? I could feel your essence from 4 blocks away, Brielle. I found this in a dumpster, and every instinct I possess demanded I track down who had thrown away something so precious. I didn't throw it away. I sold it to buy medicine for my brother. I know. Something softened in Alaric's expression. I watched you care for him, watched you sacrifice what you loved most to save what you loved more. It was admirable. Brielle's mind was reeling, trying to process information that made no sense. Vampires, magic, ancient bloodlines. It was like someone had dumped a fantasy novel into her life and expected her to just go along with it. This isn't real, she said finally. I'm dreaming. I fell asleep at the table, and this is a really weird stress dream because of the hair thing. Alaric moved faster than her eyes could track. One moment he was across the room, the next he was right in front of her, his cold fingers wrapped around her wrist, the one holding the knife. His touch sent electricity racing up her arm, made her gasp with the sudden intensity of it. Does this feel like a dream? His voice was low, intimate. Can you feel the connection between us, Brielle? The way your blood sings in your veins when I'm near? That's the keeper bond recognizing what I am. What we could be together. She could feel it. God help her. She could feel something thrumming beneath her skin, a resonance that made her want to lean closer even as every survival instinct screamed at her to run. Let go of me. He released her immediately, stepping back with his hands raised. I will never force you, Brielle. That is not the way of the keeper bond. You must choose freely. Choose what? I don't even understand what's happening. Then let me explain. Alaric gestured to her worn couch. Please, sit. Let me tell you about the world you never knew existed. Brielle should have said no, should have screamed and run and barricaded herself in her room. But curiosity was a powerful drug, and the Vampire King had just confirmed that magic was real, and she somehow carried it in her blood. She sat. Still holding the knife, but she sat. Alaric settled into the chair across from her, looking absurdly regal in her shabby living room. The vampire world exists alongside yours, hidden but present. We have our own governments, our own territories, our own laws. I rule the Northern Covenant, everything from Maine to Michigan, all vampire bloodlines that swear fealty to my throne. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you are. Keepers weren't human servants, Brielle. They were partners, equals. A vampire bonded to a keeper became exponentially more powerful, their senses sharper, their strength greater, their connection to both the human and vampire worlds deeper. And the keeper gained protection, wealth, status. They lived in courts as advisors and companions, honored and cherished. You said the bloodlines died out. They did. The last known keeper family was slaughtered in the French Revolution, caught up in vampire politics they couldn't escape. We thought the bloodline was extinct. Alaric leaned forward, his silver eyes intense. But you carry the markers, Brielle. I would stake my throne on it, which means somewhere in your ancestry, keeper blood survived. Brielle's head was spinning. Even if this is all true, which I'm not saying I believe, what does it have to do with me? I have a life, a brother who needs me. I can't just drop everything because some vampire king thinks I have magic blood. Benjamin, Alaric said the name thoughtfully. The medicine you bought will cure his infection, but the underlying weakness in his immune system will remain. He'll get sick again and again, each time worse than the last. The words hit Brielle like a slap. How do you? I can smell it on him. The genetic flaw that makes him susceptible to illness. Human medicine can treat the symptoms but not the cause. Alaric's expression was neutral, but his words were calculated. Keeper magic could. Brielle surged to her feet. Are you seriously bribing me with my brother's life? I'm offering you a solution to a problem you didn't know was unsolvable. Alaric stood as well, his presence filling the small room. If you bonded with me, if you unlocked your keeper abilities, you could share that magic with Benjamin. Strengthen his blood. Make him immune to the illnesses that will otherwise kill him before he turns 20. You don't know that. I am 267 years old, Brielle Zimmerman. I have seen more human deaths than you can imagine. I know the smell of someone dying by degrees. His voice gentled. I also know that you would do anything to save him. You already sold your hair. What else would you sacrifice? Brielle felt tears burn her eyes. What do you want from me? Your choice. Your willing participation in awakening what's already in your blood. Alaric moved closer. Not touching, but near enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. Come with me to my court. Let me teach you what you are. Let me unlock your power. And in return, I will save your brother and give you a life beyond anything you've ever imagined. And if I say no?" Pain flashed across Alaric's perfect features. "Then I will leave and never return. I will not force this, Brielle. The keeper bond only works if both parties choose it freely. I can offer, but I cannot compel." Brielle looked at the knife still clutched in her hand, then at the vampire king who had invaded her life with impossible promises. Every logical bone in her body said this was insane, that she should refuse, that she should protect herself and Benjamin from whatever this was, but Benjamin was dying. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but Alaric was right. She'd seen the way her brother struggled, the way each illness hit him harder. The doctors had said it was just bad luck, but what if it was more? What if there was actually a way to save him? And beneath that practical consideration was something else. Something that whispered that the emptiness she'd felt her whole life, the sense of not quite fitting anywhere, might actually have an explanation. That she might actually be something more than a waitress barely scraping by. "I need time to think." Alaric inclined his head. "You have 3 days. Then I must return to my court. There are matters that require the king's presence. If you decide to accept, meet me at the Thornwood Hotel on Friday at midnight. The penthouse suite is mine. Come there and we'll begin. And if I don't show up, then I will respect your choice and leave you to your life." Alaric moved toward the door, then paused. "But Brielle, the vampire world knows about you now. I found you, which means others will too. Not all of them will be as respectful of your choice as I am. If you refuse my protection, you'll need to be very careful." With that terrifying parting shot, he opened her front door despite it being locked and bolted and disappeared into the hallway. Brielle stood frozen for a long moment, her heart hammering. Then she rushed to the door, checking the locks. They were still engaged, still fastened. Vampires could apparently walk through locks like they were suggestions. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up. The next 3 days were the longest of Brielle's life. She went through the motions work. Home, caring for Benjamin. Sleep, but her mind was consumed with Alaric's offer. She researched vampires on her breaks, finding nothing but fiction and folklore. She looked up her family history and found nothing unusual, just generations of ordinary people doing ordinary things. But she couldn't forget the feeling of Alaric's touch on her wrist, the way something in her blood had responded to his presence, recognizing. Benjamin was improving rapidly. By the 2nd day, he was well enough to be annoyed at being stuck in bed. By the 3rd, he was talking about going back to school next week. The medicine had worked a miracle. But for how long? Brielle couldn't shake Alaric's words, the underlying weakness. The inevitable next infection. She'd already lost both parents to illness, her mother to cancer, when Brielle was 15, her father to a heart attack when she was 20. She'd raised Benjamin mostly alone for the last 3 years, working double shifts and sacrificing everything to keep them afloat. If there was even a chance that Alaric was telling the truth, that she could protect Benjamin permanently, how could she not take it? But the cost. Going to a vampire court. Bonding with a king. Unlocking magic she didn't understand. It was terrifying. It was also, she admitted in her darkest moments, thrilling. Friday arrived with cold rain and gray skies. Brielle told Benjamin she was going out with friends from work, a lie that made her stomach hurt, and dressed carefully in her nicest jeans and a sweater that didn't have any holes. She looked at herself in the mirror, at her short hair that had started to grow out just slightly, and wondered what the hell she was doing. Then she thought about Benjamin's smile when he'd eaten breakfast without coughing, and she knew. The Thornwood Hotel was in the wealthy district, all glass and steel and understated luxury. Brielle felt wildly out of place as she walked through the lobby, her wet sneakers squeaking on marble floors. The elevator to the penthouse required a key card, but when she pressed the call button, the doors simply opened. Vampire magic, she supposed. The ride-up was smooth and silent. Brielle watched the floor numbers climb 20, 30, 40, and tried to calm her racing heart. She could still turn around, could still run, but she didn't. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse suite, and Brielle stepped out into luxury beyond anything she'd ever imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights, rain streaming down the glass in silver rivulets. The furniture was modern and elegant, all clean lines and rich fabrics. Art that was probably worth more than her entire apartment building hung on the walls, and in the center of it all stood Alaric Thorne, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt that made his pale skin and silver eyes even more striking. He looked like something out of a dream, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. "You came." His voice held relief and something that might have been joy. "I came." Brielle stepped further into the room, her wet shoes leaving marks on the hardwood floor. But I have conditions. Name them. Benjamin's safety comes first. Whatever this bonding thing is, whatever you want from me, he gets cured first, protected first. That's non-negotiable. Agreed. Alaric moved closer, his movements as fluid as water. I give you my word as king your brother will be under my personal protection. No vampire in the Northern Covenant would dare harm him. Second condition. You teach me everything. I'm not going into this blind. I want to know about the vampire world, the keeper bond, what I'm getting into. Full transparency, also agreed. You deserve to understand what you are. Brielle took a deep breath. And third, if I decide this isn't for me, if I want out, you let me go. No forcing, no manipulation. My choice remains mine. Alaric was quiet for a long moment, his silver eyes searching her face. That condition I cannot guarantee indefinitely. Brielle's stomach dropped. What? Once the bond begins to form, it becomes difficult to break without serious consequences to both parties. I won't lie to you about that, Brielle. Alaric's expression was serious, but I can promise you a trial period. 3 months in my court, learning and exploring your power, with no permanent bond formed. At the end of that time, if you truly wish to leave, I will do everything in my power to help you do so safely. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and honestly was worth something. Okay. Brielle extended her hand. 3 months. But we do this my way, at my pace. Alaric looked at her outstretched hand for a moment, then took it gently in his own. His skin was cool, his grip firm but careful. Your pace, little keeper. I am a patient man. The moment their hands touched, Brielle felt a spark of connection that raced up her arm and settled in her chest like a second heartbeat. Alaric's eyes widened slightly, silver turning almost luminous. You feel it, he murmured. The recognition. Your blood knows mine. It's weird. But she didn't pull her hand away. What happens now? Now we begin. Alaric released her hand and stepped back. But first, practical matters. You'll need to settle things with your life, your job, your apartment. Benjamin will be moved to a secure location where he can be properly cared for while we work. He's going to ask questions. Then we tell him a version of the truth. That you've been offered a position with a wealthy family. That it comes with benefits, including medical care for relatives. He doesn't need to know about vampires unless you choose to tell him. Brielle nodded slowly. It was a good cover story. Benjamin would be suspicious he knew her too well, but he'd also be relieved to have his medical needs covered. And me? Where do I go with me? To my estate outside the city. Alaric gestured to the windows, to the darkness beyond. The court resides there, in a compound that served as the seat of Northern power for 150 years. You'll have your own quarters, your own space. But you'll need to be close for the training to work. Training. To unlock your keeper abilities, you need to learn to sense and channel the magic in your blood. It requires meditation, practice, and proximity to vampire power. Alaric's expression turned almost gentle. I won't pretend it will be easy, Brielle. But I believe you're strong enough. Brielle thought about her shabby apartment, her minimum wage job, her life of constant struggle. Then she thought about Benjamin healthy and safe, about discovering she might actually be special after all. When do we start? Tonight, if you're willing. I have a car waiting. We can collect what you need from your apartment, arrange for Benjamin's care, and have you settled in the estate by dawn. It was too fast. Everything was moving too fast. But Brielle had made her choice. Let's go. The Thorne estate was a revelation. Hidden behind high walls and ancient trees, the compound sprawled across 50 acres of forested land that seemed impossible to exist this close to the city. The main house was a mansion that blended Gothic architecture with modern amenities, all stone and stained glass and soaring ceilings, but with electricity and heating and plumbing that actually worked. Brielle stood in the foyer as dawn approached, her single suitcase at her feet, and tried not to gape. Welcome home. Alaric stood beside her, his white hair almost glowing in the low light. I'll show you to your quarters. He led her through hallways lined with portraits of pale, beautiful people past vampire kings and queens, Alaric explained, and up a grand staircase to the second floor. The room he showed her to was larger than her entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed, a private bathroom, and windows that overlooked gardens just beginning to show the colors of autumn. This is mine? Brielle touched the silk bedspread with trembling fingers. Yours. Alaric stood in the doorway, not entering. The estate has 43 rooms. This wing is private. My quarters are at the end of the hall, but no one else comes here without invitation. You'll be safe. Where's everyone else? The court, you mentioned? In the lower levels and the outer buildings. Most of my court sleeps during the day. We are vampires. After all, sunlight isn't lethal, but it's uncomfortable and weakening. We're strongest at night. Alaric's expression turned rueful. which means your sleep schedule is about to change dramatically. Brielle sank onto the bed, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. It was past 5 a.m. She'd been awake for nearly 24 hours. I don't even know where to start. You start by resting. Sleep today, recover from the shock of the last few hours. Tonight we'll have dinner, and I'll introduce you to some of the court. Tomorrow we begin your training properly. Alaric moved as if to leave, then paused. Brielle, thank you for trusting me with this. I know it wasn't an easy choice. I'm still not sure it was the right choice. Ask me again in 3 months. He smiled a real smile that made him look younger, almost human. Sleep well, little keeper. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Brielle fell back onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. She'd just moved into a vampire king's mansion. She'd agreed to unlock magical powers she didn't understand. She'd left Benjamin in the care of strangers, trusting that Alaric would keep his word about protection and healing. She'd lost her mind, but as she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by silk and safety for the first time in years, part of her whispered that maybe losing her mind was exactly what she'd needed. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of learning and discovery. Brielle met members of Alaric's inner court vampires with names like Cassian and Isolde and Theron, all of them pale and beautiful and utterly inhuman. They treated her with curious respect, calling her keeper like it was a title of honor. Benjamin was installed in a private medical facility on the estate grounds, cared for by doctors who asked no questions and provided treatment that seemed almost miraculous. Within days, his color improved. Within a week, he was stronger than Brielle had seen him in months. Whatever job you took, don't quit it, Benjamin told her during one of her daily visits. These people are miracle workers. Brielle just smiled and changed the subject. The training was harder than she'd expected. Alaric worked with her every night, teaching her to sense the magic in her blood. It started with meditation, learning to quiet her mind and feel the power that supposedly flowed through her veins. At first, Brielle felt nothing but foolish, sitting cross-legged in Alaric's private study while he talked about energy and essence and connection. But slowly, so slowly, she began to feel it. A warmth in her chest that spread outward when Alaric was near, a tingling in her fingertips when she concentrated, a sense of something vast and ancient stirring inside her. That's it. Alaric's voice was warm with approval. You're beginning to awaken. They sat facing each other, knees almost touching, the study lit only by firelight. Alaric had explained that proximity helped, that the keeper bond responded to the presence of vampire power, that being near him would help unlock her abilities faster. Brielle opened her eyes and found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. What happens when I'm fully awakened? Your blood will carry active magic instead of dormant potential. You'll be able to share that power with me through the bond, enhancing my abilities, and in return, I'll be able to channel my strength to you or to those you choose to protect. Alaric's silver eyes were luminous in the firelight. Like Benjamin! So he really will be cured? Permanently? Once you're fully awakened and we complete the bond, yes. Your magic will be strong enough to share. Alaric reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. But the bond must be willing on both sides, Brielle. It requires trust and connection. The word hung between them, loaded with meaning, because over the past 2 weeks, Brielle had realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was starting to care about Alaric Thorne, not as a king or a vampire or a magical means to an end, but as a person. He was patient with her questions, gentle with her fears, and surprisingly funny when he let his formal mask slip. He told her stories about his centuries of life, about the vampire politics he navigated, about the loneliness of being king with no one who truly understood what he was. And he listened when she talked about her life, about losing her parents, about raising Benjamin alone, about her dreams of someday having more than just survival. He made her feel heard in a way no one else ever had. It was dangerous, these growing feelings. But Brielle couldn't seem to stop them. What about you? She asked quietly. What do you get out of this bond besides more power? Alaric was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Companionship. Understanding. Someone who sees me as more than just the king. His eyes met hers. Keepers were partners, Brielle, not servants or donors or political tools. They were equals who chose to stand beside their vampire, who provided not just power but genuine connection. I have been alone for so long, the thought of having that kind of bond again. He trailed off, vulnerability flickering across his perfect features. You've had a keeper before? Brielle asked. No. I was too young when the bloodlines died out only 20 years of vampire, but my sire had one. I saw what they shared, the depth of their connection. Alaric's expression turned distant with memory. When she died, part of him died too. I swore I would never seek that kind of bond unless I found someone truly worthy. And you think I'm worthy?" The question came out as a whisper. Alaric's focus snapped back to her, fierce and certain. "I think you're extraordinary, strong and brave and loyal. You sacrificed your beauty to save your brother. You faced a vampire king with a kitchen knife and demanded conditions. You've adapted to impossible revelations with grace and courage." His hand tightened on hers. "Yes, Brielle Zimmerman, I think you're worthy." The air between them seemed to crackle with tension. Brielle was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the cool press of Alaric's fingers against hers, of the silver fire in his eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of this bond, of what it means, of what I'm feeling. What are you feeling?" Brielle took a shaky breath. "Like I'm falling, like I'm standing at the edge of something huge, and if I step forward, I'll never be the same. You won't be." Alaric lifted his free hand slowly, carefully, and touched her cheek. His skin was cool, but his touch was gentle. "The bond will change you, Brielle, deepen you, connect you to a power and a world you never knew existed. But the core of who you are, that beautiful, fierce, loving soul, that will remain. Promise. I swear it on my throne and my life." Alaric leaned closer, his eyes searching hers. "I will protect what makes you you, Brielle, even if it means slowing down, even if it means giving you more time. Your humanity, your heart, your choice, those are sacred to me." Brielle didn't know which of them moved first, but suddenly his lips were on hers, cool and careful and achingly tender. The kiss sent power singing through her veins, made the warmth in her chest explode into heat that raced through her entire body. She gasped, and Alaric pulled back immediately, concern flooding his features. "Too much? Did I hurt you?" "No, no." That was Brielle pressed her hand to her chest, feeling power thrumming beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. "What just happened?" The bond. Alaric's voice was rough, his eyes blazing silver. "Physical contact accelerates the awakening, but emotional connection, genuine feeling, creates surges of power. Brielle, do you understand what this means?" She understood. The bond was responding not just to proximity or training, but to the feelings growing between them, to the attraction and trust and something deeper that was building every day. "I think I'm falling for you," Brielle whispered, "and I don't know if that's real, or just the bond, or it's real." Alaric cupped her face in both hands, his touch reverent. "The bond enhances what's already there, Brielle. It doesn't create feelings from nothing. What you feel is yours, true and genuine. What do you feel?" Alaric's smile was almost sad. "I feel like I've waited 267 years to find you. Like every moment before, this was just preparation for the moment you walked into my life carrying your sacrifice and your strength." He rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling for you too, little keeper, falling hard and fast and completely." Brielle closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. This was insane. She'd known him for 2 weeks, but time felt different in the vampire world, compressed and expanded at the same time. 2 weeks had felt like months, their nightly training sessions creating an intimacy that normal dating could never match. "I'm still scared." "Good. Fear means you understand the magnitude of what we're building." Alaric pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "But Brielle, I will never let you face that fear alone." The next weeks blurred together in a haze of training and discovery and growing connection. Brielle's power awakened further with each session, until she could feel magic humming through her veins like electricity. She learned to channel it consciously, to direct it toward Alaric, and feel his vampire strength surge in response, and they grew closer. Stolen kisses in the study, long conversations that lasted until dawn, moments of laughter and vulnerability that made Brielle's heart ache with how right this felt. Benjamin continued to improve, his strength returning in ways that amazed his doctors. He asked fewer questions as time went on, content with the knowledge that his sister had found something good, that they were both finally safe. But safety in the vampire world was relative. Brielle was in the estate library one evening, reading about keeper history, when Alaric burst through the door with an urgency she'd never seen from him. "We have a problem." His face was grim. "Gather what you need. We may need to leave quickly." Brielle's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "The Southern Covenant knows about you. Their queen Morgana has declared that any keeper should be shared among all vampire royalty, not claimed by one king." Alaric's jaw was tight with fury. "She's threatening war if I don't bring you before the Council of Kings? War? Over me? Over what you represent. Power advantage. A keeper bonded to one king upsets the balance of vampire politics." Alaric moved to her side, his presence protective. "I won't let them have you, Brielle. You're mine not as property, but by choice. I'll go to war with every covenant in existence before I let anyone take you." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel cherished, protected. What are our options? We can run. Take you and Benjamin somewhere no covenant can find you. I have resources, safe houses across the world. Alaric's expression was torn, but it would mean abandoning my throne, my court, everything I've built for 2 centuries. I won't let you do that. Brielle stood and took his hands. There has to be another way. There is. We complete the bond, fully and permanently. Alaric's silver eyes were intense. A completed bond cannot be broken or shared. You would be mine, and I would be yours in a way no council of kings could dispute. They might be angry, but vampire law is absolute. They couldn't separate us without violating oaths that predate their own thrones. Brielle's heart hammered. The 3 months aren't up. We agreed. I know, and I'm not demanding you decide right now. Alaric squeezed her hands gently. But the council meeting is in 3 days. We need to choose run, face them with an incomplete bond and hope for mercy, or complete the bond and stand before them as an established pair. What do you want to do? Alaric's laugh was short and sharp. I want to complete the bond. I want to stand before those ancient vultures and tell them you're mine, and they can choke on their political machinations. But that's my desire, Brielle. What do you want? What did she want? Brielle looked at the vampire king who'd upended her life, who'd given her safety and power, and something that felt desperately like love. She thought about Benjamin, healthy and safe, about the magic thrumming in her veins, about the way her heart leaped every time Alaric smiled at her. She'd been falling for weeks. Maybe it was time to stop fighting gravity. Tell me what completing the bond means. Exactly. Alaric led her to a couch, and they sat, their hands still linked. The final bonding is a blood exchange. You would drink from me and I from you, mixing our essences completely. It would lock your keeper power into active state permanently and tie us together in a way that's both magical and emotional. Would it hurt? No, the opposite, actually. It's supposed to be. Alaric's pale skin somehow managed to show a faint flush, intensely pleasurable, intimate, the most profound connection 2 beings can share. Brielle's cheeks heated. Oh, the bond would let us sense each other's emotions, share strength across distances, and provide mutual protection. If you were threatened, I would know and feel compelled to defend you. If I were injured, you could channel power to help me heal. Alaric's thumb traced patterns on her palm. We would be bound for as long as we both lived, which, for me, could be centuries more. Would I become immortal? No, but the bond would slow your aging significantly. You might live 150 years instead of 80. Long enough that we could have time together. Time. The word held so much promise. Decades of this connection, this partnership, this growing love. And if I say yes, you'll stand before this council and tell them I'm yours? I'll stand before the council and tell them you chose me, as I chose you, that we are bound by mutual will and ancient law. Alaric's expression turned fierce, and I will dare any of them to challenge it. Brielle took a deep breath. She was 23 years old. 3 months ago, she'd been a waitress selling her hair for medicine money. Now she was contemplating binding herself permanently to a vampire king and entering a political battle that could spark war. It was insane. It was also the most alive she'd ever felt. I have one condition. Name it. Benjamin gets to know the truth. All of it. If I'm doing this, if I'm entering your world fully, he deserves to know why. Brielle met Alaric's eyes steadily, and he has to accept it. I won't bond with you if it means losing my brother. Alaric was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. That's fair. We'll tell him together. Tonight. Benjamin took it better than expected. He listened to Brielle's explanation of vampires and keepers, and the bond with wide eyes and a slack jaw, but he didn't interrupt. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, then he looked at Alaric. You really love my sister? More than I thought possible. Alaric said simply. And you'll keep her safe? Both of us safe? On my honor and my throne. Your family is my family now, Benjamin. You will want for nothing and fear nothing as long as I exist. Benjamin turned to Brielle. Are you happy? Like, genuinely happy? Not just doing this for me? Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. Yeah, Ben, I'm happy. Scared out of my mind, but happy. Then do it. Benjamin reached out and squeezed her hand. You've sacrificed everything for me, Brie. It's time you did something for yourself. And if that something happens to come with vampire powers and a hot boyfriend, well, who am I to judge? Brielle laughed through her tears and hugged her brother tight. I love you, you brat. Love you too. Now go get bonded to your vampire king before he spontaneously combusts from looking at you like that. Brielle glanced at Alaric, who was indeed watching her with an expression of such raw devotion it made her chest ache. Tonight? She asked him. If you're ready, we can perform the bonding ceremony in the estate chapel. It's private, sacred ground. Alaric stood and offered his hand. And then tomorrow, we face the council together. Brielle took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Let's do this. The chapel was small and beautiful, lit by hundreds of candles that cast dancing shadows on stone walls. Alaric led Brielle to the altar, where an ornate silver knife waited on a velvet cushion. In the old days, there would be witnesses. A formal ceremony with both vampire court and keeper family present. Alaric picked up the knife carefully. But I think for us, this should be private. Just you and me and the vows we make. Brielle nodded, her heart hammering. What do I do? We exchange blood and speak the words of binding. The magic will handle the rest. Alaric drew the knife across his palm without flinching, silver blood welling in the cut. I, Alaric Thorne, King of the Northern Covenant, offer my blood and my bond to Brielle Zimmerman, keeper of the ancient line. I vow to protect, cherish, and honor her for all the years we share. I choose her freely and bind myself willingly. He offered his bleeding palm to her. Brielle hesitated only a moment before leaning forward and pressing her lips to the cut. Alaric's blood tasted like starlight and winter, cold and bright and utterly inhuman. Power exploded through her the moment it touched her tongue, magic surging through her veins like lightning. Now you, Alaric said softly. Brielle took the knife with shaking hands and mimicked his action, drawing the blade across her palm. The pain was sharp but brief. Blood welled, looking ordinary and human next to Alaric's silver essence. I, Brielle Zimmerman, keeper, and Alaric's chosen, offer my blood and my bond freely. Her voice shook but held steady. I vow to stand beside him, to share my power, and to trust in what we're building. I choose this. I choose him. Alaric raised her bleeding palm to his lips and drank, his eyes closing in something that looked like ecstasy. The moment his mouth touched her blood, the world exploded. Power crashed through Brielle in waves that made her cry out. She felt Alaric's presence in her mind, his emotions flooding her senses, fierce joy, profound relief, overwhelming love, and beneath it all, the bond snapping into place like a puzzle piece finding its home. She was his and he was hers, and nothing in this world or any other could break what they just created. When the surge finally subsided, Brielle found herself in Alaric's arms, both of them on their knees on the chapel floor. Their palms were pressed together, the cuts already healing, and she could feel his heartbeat impossible because vampires didn't have heartbeats. Except now she could feel it because they were bonded, and she was feeling her own pulse echoed back through him. Brielle. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. My keeper, my chosen, my love. I can feel you, she whispered in wonder, inside my head, in my heart, as I feel you, your strength, your courage, your beautiful, brilliant soul. Alaric cupped her face and kissed her deeply, the bond singing between them like music. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. Together, Brielle agreed, and knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. The Council of Kings met in a fortress beneath the city, in chambers that predated the modern world by centuries. Brielle walked into the vast stone hall at Alaric's side, wearing a dress he'd provided deep green silk that made her feel like a queen instead of a waitress. Her hand was locked in Alaric's, their bond thrumming with shared strength. 7 vampire monarchs sat on thrones arranged in a semicircle, each one pale and beautiful and ancient. Brielle recognized Morgana of the Southern Covenant, immediately white hair like Alaric's but wild where his was controlled, red eyes where his were silver, and an expression of cold fury on her perfect face. Alaric Thorne. Morgana's voice echoed through the chamber. You dare bring the keeper here bonded, without offering the other courts a chance to negotiate for her favor? I dare. Alaric's voice was ice and command. Because Brielle Zimmerman is not property to be negotiated over. She is my keeper by choice, bound by ancient law and mutual will. You have no claim on her, Morgana. None of you do. The keeper bloodlines belong to all vampires. Another king, ancient and scarred, rose from his throne. She should be shared among the courts, her power distributed equally to maintain balance. Brielle felt Alaric's rage spike through the bond, but his voice remained controlled. The keeper traditions predate your throne by 5 centuries, Marcus. The old laws are clear a keeper chooses their vampire, and that bond is absolute. Brielle chose me. The bonding is complete. You cannot unmake what has been sealed in blood and vow. Then we changed the law. Morgana stepped down from her throne, moving with predatory grace. The world has changed since the keeper bloodlines fell. We cannot allow one king to hold such advantage. Either she is shared, or what? Brielle surprised herself by speaking, her voice ringing clear in the chamber. You'll kill me? Take my power by force? That would violate every code you claim to uphold. Morgana's red eyes fixed on her with laser focus. You dare speak in this council, human? I'm not just human. I'm a keeper. And according to your own ancient laws, that makes me the equal of any vampire in this room. Brielle stepped forward, feeling Alaric's support through the bond. I chose Alaric Thorne freely. I bonded with him willingly. If you want war over that, then you're the ones violating tradition, not us." Silence fell over the chamber. The 7 kings and queens stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to fury to grudging respect. Finally, the oldest vampire present a queen who looked barely 20 but felt like she'd been alive for millennia spoke. "The girl knows the old laws, and she's right. The keeper bond cannot be disputed once completed." Her ancient eyes moved to Alaric. "But you have upset the balance, Thorne. The Northern Covenant is now significantly more powerful than the rest. What assurance do we have that you won't use this advantage to expand your territory? You have my word." Alaric's voice was granite. "I seek no expansion. My territory is sufficient. Brielle's power is for our protection and our purposes alone. I will not use it to wage war or conquest. Words are cheap. Then I offer binding oath." Alaric's silver eyes blazed. "I, Alaric Thorne, swear on my throne and my bond that I will not use my keeper's power to wage aggressive war against any covenant that honors the peace. This oath is blood-sealed and cannot be broken without my power being forfeit." The weight of the vow settled over the chamber like a physical thing. Brielle felt it through the bond, the absolute commitment, the magical binding. Alaric had just tied his hands politically to protect her, to keep the peace. The ancient queen nodded slowly. "The oath is witnessed and accepted. The bond between Alaric Thorne and his keeper is recognized as legal and absolute. This council is dissolved." Just like that, it was over. The other vampires filed out, some shooting dark looks at Brielle and Alaric, others simply looking resigned. Morgana paused as she passed. "You've made a powerful enemy today, Thorne." "I've made a powerful bond," Alaric corrected. "That's worth any number of enemies." Morgana's laugh was bitter. "We'll see." Then she was gone. Brielle let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Through the bond, she felt Alaric's relief and pride. Is it really over? The political crisis? Yes. We'll have to be careful. Morgana isn't known for accepting defeat gracefully, but the bond is recognized. You're safe. Alaric turned to her, his hands coming up to frame her face. "You were magnificent, speaking to the council like that, defending our choice. I wasn't going to let them intimidate us." Brielle smiled. "We're bonded, right? That means we face everything together." "Everything," Alaric agreed, and kissed her there in the ancient chamber, sealing their victory with affection and joy. The months that followed were the happiest of Brielle's life. She continued her training, growing stronger and more adept with her keeper powers each day. She learned vampire politics and history, became a fixture at Alaric's side during court functions, and gradually earned the respect of the Northern Covenant. Benjamin thrived under the estate's care, his health improving so dramatically that his doctors called it miraculous. Once Brielle's powers were fully developed, she channeled keeper magic to him just as Alaric had promised, strengthening his immune system permanently. Within 6 months, he was healthier than he'd ever been, strong enough to return to school and live a normal life. "I can never repay you for this," Benjamin told Alaric during one of the family dinners they shared weekly. "You already have, by being important to Brielle." Alaric's smile was genuine. "Her happiness is everything to me, and you're part of that happiness." Brielle watched the 2 most important men in her life bond over dessert and felt her heart overflow. This was what she'd fought for, what she'd risked everything to build. The bond with Alaric deepened daily, their connection growing from magical necessity to genuine partnership to profound love. He taught her about his world, and she taught him about hers. They balanced each other, his ancient wisdom and her modern perspective, his supernatural strength and her human heart. And at night, when the court was asleep and they were alone in his chambers, Alaric held her close and whispered promises about their future, about the decades they'd share, the life they'd build, the love that would sustain them through whatever challenges came. "I never thought I'd find this," Alaric murmured one night, his fingers trailing through her hair grown out again to shoulder length, still beautiful but no longer needed for sale. "Someone who sees me as more than the king, who chose me for me. I chose you because you gave me a choice," Brielle said softly. "Because you protected what mattered most to me. Because you're honorable and kind beneath all that regal posturing." "Regal posturing?" Alaric's laugh rumbled through his chest. "Is that what you think I do? I know you do. I can feel when you're putting on the king mask versus when you're just being Alaric." She poked his chest playfully. "The bond means you can't hide from me anymore. I wouldn't want to hide from you." His expression turned serious. "You're my partner, Brielle. In everything. My keeper, my love, my equal. I want to give you the world. I don't need the world. Just this. Us. Benjamin safe and healthy. A life that means something." Brielle kissed him softly. "You've already given me everything I needed. Then I'll give you everything you want to, starting with this." Alaric pulled a small box from the nightstand drawer. Inside was a ring white gold set with a stone that looked like captured starlight, intricate and beautiful and clearly ancient. This belonged to the last confirmed keeper 300 years ago. It's been in the royal vault since her death, waiting for another worthy of wearing it. Alaric took the ring out with careful fingers. Brielle Zimmerman, my keeper and my love, will you marry me? Will you be my queen in truth, standing beside me not just by magical bond but by human custom and choice? Brielle's eyes filled with tears. You want to marry me? I want to bind myself to you in every way possible. I want to stand before both our worlds and proclaim what we are to each other. Alaric's silver eyes were luminous with emotion. I love you, Brielle. I will love you for as long as I exist. Say you'll be mine in this way too. Yes. The word burst out of her on a sob of joy. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. Alaric slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, the stone blazing with light against her skin. Then he was kissing her, pouring every ounce of love and devotion through their bond, until Brielle thought she might burst from the intensity of it. They were married 3 months later in a ceremony that blended vampire tradition with human custom. Benjamin walked her down the aisle, tears streaming down his healthy, smiling face. The Northern Covenant filled the estate chapel, bearing witness as their king claimed his queen, and when Alaric lifted her veil and kissed her, the bond between them flared bright enough that even the non-magical could see it, a shimmer of power and love made visible. My wife, Alaric murmured against her lips. My keeper, my Brielle. My husband, she answered, joy flooding every syllable. My vampire. My Alaric. The reception lasted until dawn, filled with music and laughter and celebration. Brielle danced with her brother, with members of the court who'd become friends, and finally with her husband under stars that were beginning to fade into morning light. Happy? Alaric asked as he spun her in a slow circle. Deliriously. Brielle rested her head against his chest, feeling his contentment echo through the bond. Who'd have thought selling my hair would lead to this? Fate works in mysterious ways. Alaric's arms tightened around her. You sold your hair out of love and desperation. I found it and hunted down the reason. And somehow that led us here to a bond and a love neither of us expected but both of us needed. No regrets? You? Brielle thought about her old life, about struggle and poverty and constant fear. Then she looked around at her new reality, at Benjamin laughing with vampire nobility, at the estate that was now her home, at the husband who held her like she was infinitely precious. Not a single one, she said firmly. This is exactly where I'm meant to be. Years passed like pages in a beloved book, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Brielle became a formidable queen, her keeper powers making her a force in vampire politics. She advocated for better treatment of humans in vampire territory, pushed for reforms that made the supernatural world safer for everyone, and gradually became known as the queen with a human heart. Benjamin grew into a strong young man, eventually taking a position managing the estate's human affairs. He found love with one of the estate staff and gave Brielle a niece, who she spoiled shamelessly. The other vampire courts never quite forgave Alaric for claiming the keeper, but they respected the bond and the strength it brought. A few minor conflicts arose over the years, but nothing that threatened the peace. And through it all, the bond between Brielle and Alaric only grew stronger. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Alaric took Brielle to the rooftop, where he'd first watched her walk home with her hair newly shorn. They stood together in the exact spot where he'd made the decision to claim her, to hunt down the reason behind the discarded braid. 10 years, Brielle said softly. Best decade of my life, mine as well, and we have so many more ahead of us. Alaric pulled her close, his white hair gleaming in the moonlight. I love you more today than I did the day we bonded, more than I did when we married. The bond grows deeper every year. Good thing we're stuck with each other then. Brielle grinned up at him. I can feel that you're about to get sentimental, by the way. The bond is very clear on the subject. Curse these magical connections. Alaric said with mock severity. Then his expression softened into genuine emotion. But yes, I was going to get sentimental. Because I want you to know that finding you, claiming you, loving you, it's been the greatest privilege of my very long life. You saved me from loneliness I didn't even realize I felt. You gave me partnership and purpose and a kind of joy I never knew existed. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. Even after a decade, he could still move her to tears with his words. You saved me too, from a life of just surviving instead of living. You gave me magic and safety and a love I never dreamed was possible. We saved each other then. Alaric kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. My perfect, brave, beautiful keeper. Your wife, Brielle corrected. Your partner. Your pain in the ass who's going to keep you honest for the next 100 years. I'm counting on it. Alaric's smile was radiant. After all, I didn't track you down and fight an entire council of kings just to let you go soft on me now." They stood together on that rooftop until dawn began to lighten the sky, wrapped in each other and the bond that connected them more intimately than any magic or vow. Below them, the city woke to a new day. Oblivious to the vampire king and his keeper queen who'd found love in the most unexpected way, from a single act of sacrifice hair sold for medicine had grown a bond that would last lifetimes. From a vampire's curiosity about discarded locks had come a hunt that ended in forever. And neither Brielle nor Alaric would have changed a single moment of the journey that brought them together. Their story wasn't over. With decades still ahead of them, there would be more challenges, more joys, more moments of magic and mundane life blended together. Benjamin's children would grow up, knowing their aunt was a vampire queen. The Northern Covenant would continue to thrive under their joint rule. And the bond between keeper and vampire would become legend, proof that the old ways could survive in the modern world. But for now, in this moment, as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Brielle and Alaric stood together and simply existed in the happiness they'd built. Two souls who'd found each other against impossible odds. Two hearts bonded by choice and sealed in love. The hair that started it all still existed, preserved in a crystal case in their private chambers. A reminder of sacrifice, of the moment when Brielle's life had changed forever. Sometimes she looked at it and marveled at the strange twists of fate that had brought her here. She'd sold her hair for medicine, never dreaming a vampire king would find the shorn locks and hunt down why, never imagining that act of love for her brother would lead to a love that transformed her entire existence. But she was grateful, so incredibly grateful. Because sometimes the things we lose become the breadcrumbs that lead us to what we were always meant to find. And Brielle Zimmerman, once a struggling waitress, now a keeper and queen, had found everything she never knew she needed in the silver eyes of a vampire who'd claimed her not as property, but as an equal, as a partner, as the other half of his soul. Their love was epic and eternal, grounded in choice and elevated by magic. It was the kind of love that songs would be written about, that would be whispered in vampire courts for centuries to come. The keeper and her king, the sacrifice that became salvation, the bond that changed everything, and they lived it together, day by day and night by night, for all the beautiful years that followed, forever bound, forever chosen, forever home.